One of the very best we have ever seen in the Premier League. I don't think anyone would dispute that. Thierry, the manager, has been spreading his wings since we last saw him here on Sky Sports, 2.5 years ago. This is what the journey looks like so far. 2 jobs in, Thierry. Monaco is where it started. Took charge with the club in the relegation zone, progressed the League Cup semi-finals there. Just 20 games there, and then it was a trip to MLS, to Montreal, in difficult circumstances as COVID struck, but qualified for the playoffs for the first time in 4 seasons and reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League. So neither was an easy assignment, Thierry. Which was the more challenging of those 2 jobs?
Most definitely the past year, for obvious reasons. I'm sure you guys will imagine. Obviously, we're talking about obviously a COVID year still going on. Things are getting better. People lost family members, their business. Some people lost business. Some people lost, jobs. It was very difficult. What people didn't know is that we, obviously, as a Canadian team, had to play all the games away from home, apart from the MLS tournament and a couple of games at the very beginning, early days. We had to relocate because the American teams couldn't travel in Canada because of COVID, and so it became very difficult to try to perform. Players were getting injured, not seeing their family, and but I learned a lot on the human side of it. It was tough. It was a tough year, but we managed to do what we wanted to do, meaning going into the playoffs. Obviously, we didn't win it and had an okay run, if I can say, in the Champions League, but it was challenging.
How tough was it for you personally, and maybe on a mental level as well? If you're having to, as you say, to relocate, you're there without your family who couldn't come over because of the COVID situation, and you're based pretty much in a hotel in the States for such a large period.
Well, if you really count how many times we had to quarantine as a team last year, or as individuals, because when we were going back to Canada, we always had to quarantine. So I think I quarantined over 150 days. So how it does sometimes when you're alone with your own brain, especially with mine. You wouldn't like to be in there. No, but joking aside, it became tough because we had the MLS is Back tournament, and we had to play we lost early in that tournament, but you had to go there for a month and something. Some that went till the end, played 2 months, and so you were doing field, hotel. What I'm doing here is I'm not complaining, but it's a fact. Jamie will tell you, when you go in preseason, you always try to plan preseason that the preseason doesn't pass 10 days. So you have 10 days, a little break, 10 days and a little break, because if not, guys are going to have a go at each other because it's just normal. It's very difficult. But we had to stay there for a month and a half. After that, we came back with quarantine. We had to relocate in the US because, as I said before, the American teams couldn't enter Canada. So you out there with all that involves, you have then personal problems, you have to win games. But like I said, I learned that nobody really cares about that. You have to be the leader of the pack, you have to be the captain, and make sure that you can control that situation. It wasn't easy. We managed to do it. At times we had games where we were 14 or 16, 2 goalkeepers on the bench. It was tough, but I learned a lot on the human side of it.
Thierry, what's it going back to sort of going into management, and you've basically, there's nothing you haven't done as a player. World Cup, Champions League, best player in the Premier League, all these. You tick all these boxes and you've got to the top of your playing career. You then go into management where you don't know nothing about management. You're starting in management. We've spoken on this show about big name players, haven't we, going into management. What's that like for you? Because the scrutiny on you because of your ability as a player, but you're a novice as a coach and you're starting from the bottom and you've got to wake up. Do you find that unfair, the scrutiny, or has it been humbling for you in terms of you getting a lot more criticism maybe as a coach or a manager than maybe you did as a player because you were so good? Do you think that it's unfair, the scrutiny that big name players get when they get that first job, when you're learning on the job?
No, it goes with it. It goes with it the same as a player sometimes. When you were good, you were not that good. you know, you have a team with you. When you're bad, you're not that bad. People do not tend to see what's the picture. When I arrived in Monaco, I had 1,700 players. 17. Like 9 to 10 of them were starters. So it takes time to rebuild something, right? You arrive in MLS, you have to deal with COVID. And obviously you have a project in place and you're trying to achieve something. This is not easy. And what goes on with my name or whatever I've done before, I always say, like, I haven't done anything as a coach. I'm not pretending to be, you know, whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. You know, you can't be too much in the future. You have to be in the present, right? But you can't help. You know, people will always ask me a question. You know, sometimes I got questions after games like, would you have scored that goal if you were the striker? But I'm not. So he missed it. Why are you asking me if I would have scored that goal? I'm not on the field anymore. But you're always going to get those questions. You're always going to get that scrutiny, and people analyzing what you're doing because of what you did before. But I'm separating myself from that. But at times, sometimes people don't.
You've had 2 jobs. I'm sure there's going to be a third. What would you take from those first 2 jobs and do differently at job number 3?
The first one, I'll be honest with you, if I knew how it was going to be, I would have acted differently because I thought I was going to have time. You prepare something. First and foremost, you need to assess the situation, being able to see what's happening, change, bring players that might suit your style of playing. But I didn't get that time, and at the end of the day, you don't win, it becomes very difficult, right? And I understand that, and that's part of the game. When you go to what happened to in Montreal, it's very difficult for me to judge that one because I couldn't even find anyone to know how to deal with that one because no one went through that. Who went through that type of situation before, because it is the first time that we have to deal with that. And so you have coaches that were going through that, but still being at home in their country and going to their training ground, to their house, right? But when you have to deal with bringing a team out, those guys not seeing their family, those guys not seeing their kids, if you bring them back, you can't train. We played some games where we trained 2 days and we went to play against a team that was already training for a very long time just because we couldn't if we go back in Canada.
What you're talking about now could actually help your man management. Why do you think in your next job? Is that what you're talking about, what you've taken from that?
It is something, I joke about it, but actually it's not a joke. I remember nowadays, you have to go and meet the senior players. They were not going to come your way, right? You have to show them that you can perform for them. And then when they see that you might make them win, they're like, oh, the kid is good. Let's bring him along. And still, you had to go to them. Now you find yourself in a situation, now you're the senior guy, and you have to go to the new generation. Why? Because things have changed. What I knew that was set in stone, it's not the same anymore. I can't speak to those guys and have the same view of what I knew before because it's not the same anymore. Those guys are re-educating me on what I thought was set in stone.
So that's changed your experience, has it? Through your experience of being in the job?
I think it's the same in life. Like those youngsters are challenging you on anything, even if they're right or wrong, even if they can see that they are the problem. I'm not saying that's what happened with me, but they will challenge you and explain. They're waiting for you to explain to them what's wrong when it's clear to be seen.
Does your status as a player matter to the players that are playing for you, do you think?
At the very beginning, you know, sometimes people will, the guys will ask me questions and stuff like that. But then after, it's done. You know, you need to make sure that they understand what we need to do. And it was a tough year last year, like I said. Stop and go. You know, you're trying to have a new philosophy, a new identity, and we had 4 pre-seasons. It's very difficult to put something in place with a new team like that.
And you talk quite a bit about philosophy. And I think we'd have an understanding from working with you that you had a very clear way of how you wanted your teams to play. You've talked a lot about the influence of Pep Guardiola. But after a couple of jobs, would you next time be thinking more about the immediacy of results? Or is it still very much you can't compromise how you view football?
No, I think you have a certain way of thinking, you have an identity and a philosophy. Amongst that, can you change sometimes the tactical aspect of it, but the identity and philosophy should remain the same. I like to play out from the back, but I like the option of playing a long pass also. You can't always play short and you can't always play long. I think you need to give the option of the player to play short and have the confidence of playing short because they know what's going to happen. but also they need to know that they can play a long pass, and those players need to be in their position to be able to attack. But then the guy on the ball feels comfortable because he's like, okay, I can play short, but I can play a long pass, not a long ball, a hop ball, a long pass, because you already set up the teams in a way where you can play short and when you can play long. If you do the same thing all the time, it's very predictable, and you can get caught. But do you interchange sometimes the tactic, sometimes who's going to be out wide, who's going to come inside? But I like to have the same identity and the same philosophy because that's how it is. And in Monaco, it was difficult, as you can imagine. We're at the bottom. I wanted my team to play out from the back. Same in Montreal. We went from a team that was a team that used to play on the counter, that the team that actually made the playoff. I know we don't have the best year ever, but made the playoff by trying to play out from the back. And this is a little victory because you see guys now that were brave enough because they were finding themselves in a system where they're like, okay, I have a solution short, but if I don't feel comfortable with it, I can always play a long pass. Were we always successful with that one? No, not always, but they had the choice.
I think what you're saying is really interesting. I think it's really tough for young coaches because you need to get results to sort of have longevity and build a coaching career. And we always talk about how managers are perceived and what your system is or how you want to play. And for any young manager coming in, if you want to get to the top in management, you can't be seen as being a direct manager. Now, there's teams who we analyse on here who do play direct. Not a problem. We look at all different types of football. But I'm sure you one day want to manage Arsenal or want to manage France. So you've also got to be seen as a coach. You feel that. So you have to play a certain way. You've got to be seen as like, if you wanted to get to the top, you've got to be seen to play the way the teams at the top play.
Listen, I'm a young coach. I'm trying to learn my curve. This is what I'm trying to do. But I think people need to know what they're going to get if they get you. Whatever they want. That's on also, you're not alone here. So if the management wants a guy that's going to save a situation, then they might get a coach that's going to play direct for the minute because it takes a little while to put a team in position to give them the confidence that they can play out from the back, right? But if a team wants to change their philosophy and wants a coach that play out from the back and have a certain style of play, I'm thinking about Brighton, for example. You know, they went to get the coach at Swansea just because he had a style of play and they wanted to go that direction. That doesn't mean that Chris Hughton did a bad job. I don't think that he did a bad job, but they wanted to have that's on them. Was it fair or unfair? They wanted to go that way, they analyze, and they're like, okay, we want to go with that manager. So whatever it is, you need to have a certain way of playing and people know what they're going to get.
We were talking about this earlier. Is he a coach that you admire, Graham Potter?
Yes, I do. I do, like Bielsa, like Pep, like Scott Parker. You know, the other day, he tried to play out from the back, conceded 2 goals out of it. But in the first half, he was getting praised because he was being brave against Man City and the way he went about it at Liverpool. And yes, you're going to concede goals like that because that's how you play. Like teams that kick the ball in the stand or refuse to play concede goals because they invite pressure. So it is what it is, but this is how he likes to play. That speaks volume to me. I'm not saying that other coaches are not good. I'm just saying that speaks a bit more to me because that's what I like to see.
Thierry, I was obviously played against you, and you were demanding of your players on the pitch when I played against you. How demanding are you as a coach, and you have to almost lessen your demands when you're a coach as opposed to being a player for Arsenal? I'll
be honest with you, you know, at the very beginning, first job, first thing, you learn. You learn, right? I'm not the same coach, well, I'm still young. If you see my first training session, it's totally different than the last one I've done. Those players are really educating you. Those guys walk in the dressing room, the first thing they look at is what you said in your press conference after the game to see if you killed them or you didn't kill them. You know what I mean? No, it's true. They don't even speak to each other. They go on their phone and they speak, and they're like this, looking at their phone. So you need to be careful what you say straight away after the game.
Did you kill them?
No. Maybe in a dressing room, I think it's important to say the truth at one point, to be honest with each other, right? Because we're trying to achieve something. And public might be a mistake because some guys will not react well to that. And you have to learn from your mistakes at times. And this is normal. I learned from a mistake as a player, right? The same with you, Jamie. But you can't behave the same way right now. You can't just, like I would never have gone and seen my coach before. Why am I not playing? You knew why you're not playing. If you're not playing, it's because you're not good, right? That was the story before. Find a way. Now, no, you can't do that. You have to go to them. You have to speak to them. You have to praise them, even when sometimes they don't deserve it. But you need to find a way to motivate that player, whatever way it is. Put your ego on the side, leave it there, and this is about the team. Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but the player will win. Because you need them to win games. Pep says this all the time, but it is true. He used to say it in the dressing room when we were at Barcelona. He used to say, without you guys, I'm nothing. You're at the mercy of your players sometimes. You need to have an idea or whatever it is. Okay, I understand. But if those guys are not performing, it's on you also to make them believe what you're about to sell them, right? But, you know, it is what it is. You can't behave the same way that we were. You can't say some stuff that you say. Sometimes you see manager at the end of the game. You know how it is. I didn't know because obviously I was never in that position. But you know how it is when you make a mistake as a coach because you play three at the back or wrong sub, and you're aware that you did. You are aware. But when someone comes and challenges you at the end of the game and say, you clearly made a mistake there, it's difficult to swallow that after 2 minutes. You lost an important game. You have to come on TV and accept that because you know that's how it is and people can judge you, right? And so, but you're there and you have to accept that it is frustrating. And that's why sometimes you see managers losing it because they couldn't compose themselves to answer that question. And sometimes you see managers that you see a game, right? And you're like, really? He's telling us that they played well, but what he's doing at that particular moment is talking to his team already, thinking about the game 3 days after.
Thierry, towards the end of your Arsenal time or Arsene Wenger's time, it obviously wasn't as successful, and I'm sure you were frustrated. Mm-hmm. That's why you moved on to Barcelona. What you're speaking about now, do you have more sympathy and understanding maybe for Arsene Wenger at that time?
For any coach, in all fairness. Now I understand what it is. Being on the other side of the line is a different ballgame, especially with the new generation, because you have to explain, you have to talk, you have to be clever, you have to show them. They understand way better this than you talking. If I said to you, Jamie, back in the days, that striker is going to come here, you would have to imagine it because you didn't grow up with a screen, you didn't grow up with a phone, you didn't grow up with iPad or whatever it is. But now you need to be good on the computer, you need to be good at talking, you need to be good at being their best friend or not their best friend. You need to understand, how am I going to speak to Dave? I'm not going to speak to Dave the same way I'm speaking to you. The coaches that I had before were speaking to everybody the same way. And that's how it was. Do I have more sympathy? Yes, I do. You know, I would say to my coaches right now, you know, now I know how it is. But it's like having a baby when people ask you, how is it to have a baby? I hold the very best. It's the most amazing thing in the world. But as long as you don't have one, you cannot understand. Now I do understand how much of a pain a player can be at times. But it's even more difficult now because you need to explain to him everything. Back in the days, if you don't understand it, then you're not playing it. You're not playing, sorry. But yeah, do I have more sympathy? Of course I have more sympathy.
So it was Monaco, then it was Montreal, and totally understand why you decided to leave that job, given the personal situation that you found yourself in there. What's next then, potentially? Is it Morecambe? Is it Montrose? Is there a theme building here?
No, listen, that's still what I want to do. My ideas are even more clear in terms of what I want to do. This year I enjoyed myself in a way, believe me or not, but it just couldn't carry on like that. It was going to be the same way, and I needed to be closer to my kids. But this is what I want to do. It is amazing, for example, when you can see that you plan something the whole week and you change the mentality of some players that used to pass the ball sideways or backward, and then suddenly they want to play forward and then want to go forward and they want to have an impact forward. It is great. For me, there's that pleasure of seeing someone changing is great. It is a bit, in a way, upsetting that I couldn't carry on because you start something you want to carry on for obvious reasons. As you mentioned, it was going to be difficult, obviously, with my kids. But I really enjoyed it. This is what I want to do.
But given everything you've told us about how you feel you've learned as a coach already, do you think it's actually been a really good thing for you that you didn't go straight into a job like an Arsenal, with all the extra scrutiny that would have brought?
Most definitely.
You've had this learning period.
Yes, and it's the same as a player. People saw the end product as a player, but I struggled at the beginning. You struggle. You go through a patch where you're asking yourself question, am I made for this? Or am I going to be a good player? Or am I made for this? Or am I going to be a good coach? It's not easy, especially I'm not having a go. You're always going to get an opportunity because a team is struggling, right? Apart from some people that sometimes have the luxury of arriving early at the beginning, put their philosophy in position, and maybe having players that can understand way quicker what the coach wants, especially what he's asking. Sometimes can be a bit challenging for some players. But if you ever become successful with the way he started, he's going to have a good test, if I can say. Would have liked to start with Messi up front and stuff like that? Yeah, of course. But, you have to learn your curve. Like I said to you, you have to put your ego on the side. You have to put what you've done on the side. This is not about you anymore. This is not about you as a player anymore. It's about you trying to enable those players to be better. And it takes time. This is something that I always say at the end of the very day. It takes time, especially, I'm not having a go at anyone, but especially when you're trying to change the DNA of a team that was maybe playing long, or to give confidence to a player that needs to play out from the back, or a goalkeeper. You have to give him option when he's on the ball. And nobody wants to be on TV losing the ball and there is a counter and you concede the goal and everybody, him again. Before you reach that, first and foremost, you need to give him that confidence that he can play out from the back. That's why sometimes when I hear people are like, why is he playing out from the back? Because his coach asked him to play out from the back and he's doing what his coach is asking him to do. So is he right or wrong? That's on you to think, but his coach is thinking is right.
Fascinating. We'll watch the next move very closely, Thierry, but thank you so much.
Hopefully. Thanks for having me.